The only thing I want the Jacksonville Jaguars to do is go to Glendale, win, get on the plane, and come back home.
You are Locked On Jaguars, your daily Jacksonville Jaguars podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
That is a fact. It is your team every day, and we are also the number one sports podcast network here on Locked On Podcast Network. Locked On Jaguars, Locked On NFL. You better be locked in, man, because this thing is what it is. Shout out to the everydayers that join us each and every day here, and shout out to those that aren't everydayers that want to be one. All you got to do is just show up every single day like everybody else does. We appreciate you making us your first listen here on Locked On Jaguars, and glad to have you. I'm going to give you a little bit of a rundown of exactly what it is we're going to do today on this episode, but I would be remiss if I did not first tell you that today's show is sponsored and brought to you by Game Time. I'm doing y'all a favor, man, because Game Time is where you need to get your tickets. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code Locked On NFL for $20 off your first purchase. We don't take y'all for granted. That's why we like to tell y'all about good things that are out there and resources for you to use to make sure they save you some money. All right, here's what we're going to do. We're going to try to save the Jaguars from a lot of headaches by telling you about what the playoff run ramifications are. That's where we're going to end up today. Right now, we think they need a heavy dose of the run, and we'll talk about that in the middle of the show. Just at the top of the show, even if they don't run it, man, just win the game. Just win. That's all we want. Win and come home 7-4. This is a game that the Jacksonville Jaguars, if they are for real, will go and handle their business and win the game. The last time they went out west, they didn't. They're not going as far as Vegas. They're stopping about 30 minutes on a flight short in Glendale, Arizona, to play the Cardinals. The Cardinals are banged up, playing with backup quarterbacks, playing with fourth-string running backs, second- and third-string offensive linemen. There's no reason why the Jacksonville Jaguars should not dominate this game. Run the football. Limit possessions, control the clock, make them desperate. Make them so desperate on offense that they depend on Jacoby Brissett doing what he did last week, throwing the ball 57 times. You throw the ball 57 times, I think you can get 2 or 3 picks and 5 sacks. Because they got guys looking like me blocking for them right now. They got dudes who are hurt. That was Kelvin Beachum and me probably look like brothers at this stage of his career. Shout out to KB, man. That's my boy. He's one of the good guys in the league, too. I'm just taking a little quick shot at him. He might text me and tell me to shut up. But no reason, man. No reason not to win this game. I do think, I don't know, it hasn't become official, I don't believe, but I don't think we're going to see Trevor this weekend. So that means my man Strigo and BJ Green, they got to help Josh Allen out with the pass rush. It should not be that much resistance this week because the Arizona Cardinals, like I said, they're way back into the depth at a lot of key positions on offense. But we ain't going to take nobody lightly because the last time we talked about a backup quarterback, we lost. And then the time before that they were talking about we were ahead when we were playing the Bengals and Joe Burrow got hurt and we were ahead. And then Jake Browning came in and, well, he looked like Joe Namath. Can't let that happen this week. Jacoby does have talent. Don't get it twisted. He has arm talent. And I know they're missing Marvin Harrison Jr., but they got Trey McBride and some wide receiver named Wilson. We talked about that on the crossover edition with Alex Clancy just the other day. They got to just win this game, man. This is just one of those that you look on the schedule and you want to win. You need to win. And it doesn't have to be pretty. If it's not pretty, we're going to talk about the fact that it was ugly and why it's ugly and why they need to cut out some of those mistakes. This is a game you got to get. You get this one and next week. There are no bye weeks in the NFL when you're actually playing. Everybody's an NFL opponent. The Titans actually took the Bears down to the wire. We saw Cleveland beat teams this year that they weren't supposed to beat and give teams trouble that they weren't supposed to give trouble. So, yeah, anything could happen. Just don't let it happen to you. Jacksonville. Anything can happen, but don't let it happen to you. Please, whatever you do not take this team lightly. In fact, it's got to be me versus me. Y'all ain't even worried about your opponent. You're just worried about the things that you need to do to win football games, regardless of who that opponent is. If you got to pretend that they're the Kansas City Chiefs, do that. But really, it should be self-motivating. Self-motivating because you don't want to happen again what happened in Houston in that fourth quarter. I will remind you that 7 of the last 8 quarters the Jaguars have played, they have been absolutely dominating. But that one little lapse in whatever it was, I ain't going to say judgment or physicality or whatever happened in Houston cannot happen again in Glendale, Arizona. Now, I know the Arizona Cardinals are not the Houston Texans, but they got some good players. Does not matter. It's me versus me. Look in the mirror, Jaguars. That is your biggest opponent this weekend. Not discounting the fact that these are NFL players. I am just telling you there's no reason that I can imagine that you need to be losing this game this weekend if you're going to really, really make some noise at the end of the season, which is, we're fast approaching that. But we're right smack in the middle of this thing trying to get that wild card. You lose that game, man, you drop down to 8. 7 playoff teams, and you drop down to 8. You end up back in a tie with the Houston Texans, and then you can pretty much kiss the division goodbye because the Jaguars are sitting there right behind the Colts and trying to make sure that they can do whatever they have to do to catch up with Indy. Yeah, I'm looking at the playoff picture as we speak, and it's just time, man. It's time to win these games that you're supposed to win. And like I said, I don't care what it looks like, although we will discuss exactly what it looks like. Yeah, we're going to do that. We always do that kind of stuff. But it's very, very imperative that the Jacksonville Jaguars do it in a fashion that is going to – this is an opportunity for them to start building momentum for who they're going to be down the stretch. So right now, as I said, we're going to discuss the playoff picture and the playoff ramifications a little bit later. But everybody behind them, with the exception of Houston that won a game last night against Buffalo, we might need to start looking at the Bills like a team that's going to be backing themselves, like doing the moonwalk out of the playoff race. The Steelers got a tough game, and then the Ravens are coming on. The Jaguars just have to handle their business, man. You don't want to be lumped into that group of teams that's sitting back there. In fact, if they win, they actually move up. I believe they move up to the 6th seed, maybe even the 5th seed if the Chargers lose, because that would give the Jaguars, if the Chargers go 7-5, the Jaguars will move up a little bit. But it's just time to separate yourselves from it's time where men and boys get separated. And it starts with winning games that you're supposed to win and beating teams that you're supposed to beat. And I'm going to tell you exactly how they're going to do that. I think they're going to do it with a heavy dose of the run game. Run it, run it, run it. I don't care who lines up on the other side of that field. When you pass the ball, you basically – I want limited possessions because I think the team – if you play a limited possession game, the team that is the absolute best will obviously win the game. And the best way to ensure that happens, run the football. We'll talk about the importance of the running game, offensive line, and both running backs in just a second here on Locked On Jaguars. All right, today's show brought to you by Prize Picks. You and I make decisions every day, but on Prize Picks, being right can get you paid. Don't miss any of the excitement of this sports season. Whether you're following the NFL, NBA, or both, there's no better time to jump in on the action. If you haven't tried it yet, Prize Picks is the simplest way to play. Just pick more or less on at least 2 player stat projections, and if you get them right, you win. Period, point blank in the discussion. It takes less than 60 seconds to make your lineup, and you can play anywhere Prize Picks operates, including California, Texas, and Georgia. Under whatever the less than is on Jalen Hurts scoring touchdowns, that's what I'll take, unless, of course, it comes down to a tush push. Download the Prize Picks app today and use the code Locked On NFL to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. That's Locked On NFL for $50 in lineups after your first $5 lineup. Prize Picks. It's good to be right. All right, shout out to all of those everydayers that made Locked On Jaguars, the Locked On Podcast Network, the number one sports podcast network. I can't say that enough, by the way. It is, I say that not bragging, but I do say that with great humility and gratitude for those that spend their hard-earned time here watching the show and listening to the show wherever you get your podcast. We absolutely appreciate you. We even appreciate the haters, the people that take everything out of context and want to nitpick every single thing. That means, the table got to be set in the midst of your enemies. So I'm glad you're here too. Appreciate you. Travis Etienne and Bayshul Tuten. Ezra Cleveland, the offensive line. Those are my spirit animals this week. And the reason why is because it's not because I don't think Trevor Lawrence in the passing game can win the game. That's not why. Sure. But I think the identity of this team is starting to really, really take shape, and it has a lot to do with being exactly what Liam Coen talked about. Liam Coen talked about when he took this team over. Who do you want to be, right? So we saw last week that the Jaguars showed you exactly who they want to be. They want to be a team that can control the clock, run the football, demoralize the other team, allow their defense to rest. Do I believe they can throw their way to a victory in Glendale? Sure. Why would you do that, though, when you are now practicing and training yourself each and every week to be who you want to be? They started it last week. No need to stop that this week. Run the football. Set up the pass. Create bigger windows for the quarterback. Keep it simplified. Control the clock. Get off to a fast start. And then you'll leave Arizona a little bit desperate because they know they'll be running out of time to have to score. They ain't going to line up with their four-string running back and run the ball down your throat behind a poor offensive line. No, they want to make this thing a shootout because when the ball is in the air, all kinds of things can happen, and everybody knows that. Tip balls, quarterback gets sacked, and I'm not saying avoid throwing the football. No, you're going to throw it. I wouldn't even be upset if you threw it early. But the design of everything to me is for you to run the ball. You can get there any kind of way you want to. Best running team I ever seen was the Cowboys in the early 90s, who came out throwing the ball early. In the first quarter, Troy Aikman's splits in the first and fourth quarter are bigger than his splits in the second and third. Get off to a lead, run the football. Strike early, back them up. Get those safeties and linebackers thinking about that real estate that they have to guard and keep their nosy self out of that box, and then pound that rock, baby, with both running backs. I would love to see those guys get about 35 carries. 35. And that's not including anything that Trevor does on bootlegs or when Bayshul Tuten is in the game and sub packages and all the team backs out and all of a sudden you get a little draw play. I'm talking about Tuten and Etienne. 20 carries for Etienne, 15 for Bayshul, or 25 for Etienne and 10 for Bayshul. I think the Jaguars have a chance to even hit some chunk plays in the running game. Saw last week, man, I saw that play that everybody was talking about that encapsulated who the Jaguars are, what they want to be. Robert Hainsey sitting on the ground celebrating. Chuma Edoga celebrating as he's running out of bounds before Travis Etienne even gets into the end zone because they were blocking people downfield. Bust them in the mouth. That's what I want them to do because I think it's going to be practice. It's a dress rehearsal for exactly what the Jaguars have to do the rest of the year. Become an extremely physical team, run the football, make the other team desperate to have to score points. And that's where you can start mixing and matching things up on defense and play little games. The game last week against the Chargers was against a team that prized themselves on physicality. Even though they were without their left tackles, they still had the interior of their offensive line. And the Jaguars basically had them looking like they were a mass unit. They were dudes laying on the field all over the place. It's almost like if you really could put a microphone on the sideline for the Chargers, they were like, we had enough. Let me out the car, Doe. I'm tired. Stop. And it felt good to just watch the Jacksonville Jaguars line up and blow people off the ball. It is sometimes the most satisfying, at least for me. I like a good 2-1 or 2-0 baseball game. I love when there's nothing that they can do to stop you. Doesn't mean I don't have confidence in Trevor Lawrence. It just means I think the Jaguars are at their absolute best when they can be physical, run the football, push people off the line, and then allow Liam Coen. Liam Coen even said it in the locker room. Wasn't that fun? That was a lot of fun. They looked like they were having fun on the sidelines. And nothing does that more than beating somebody, just beating them into submission, running the football, being physical. And I think they can pull that off with the Arizona Cardinals this weekend. Therefore, making the Cardinals believe, okay, we're running out of time. We got to throw it, and letting Jacoby Brissett back up. And even though he got a little bit of run in him, he ain't like the greatest running quarterback of all time. He likes to throw it down the field. That means 5-step drops. That means pass rush. That means sending guys in the A-gap. That means these young dudes with speed getting after the quarterback behind a porous offensive line and a fourth-string running back that might have pass protection issues. I'm saying all of those things to tell the Jacksonville Jaguars, get on the plane and come back home. 23-10 is fine with me. 21-10 is fine. Hell, 17-6 is wonderful. Just get to 7-4 because it has playoff implications that I'll talk about here in segment 3 on Locked On Jaguars. All right, today's show sponsored and brought to you by Game Time. The NFL season is back, and honestly, there's nothing better than being in the stadium surrounded by fans cheering on your team. But let's be honest, getting tickets can be a hassle. Between queues, login screens, and prices jumping at checkout is very, very frustrating. That's why I see Game Time and I use it, man. And I'm so glad that I found it because the app gives the advantage back to fans. Game Time is fast, easy, and backed by the Game Time guarantee. People always calling me, asking me for tickets, and I refer them to go to Game Time. Giving no tickets away. You got to go to Game Time because you ain't going to get beat out of the prices anyway. You'll always get 100% authentic tickets delivered on time and at the best price. Plus, all fees are included, so the price you see is the price you pay. None of that trickeration that catches you when you go to checkout. I pulled up Game Time, and in just a couple of taps, I saw amazing deals, and I'm talking about your favorite NFL games as low as $100. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, that's promo code LOCKEDON NFL for $20 off. Swipe, tap, ticket, go. Download Game Time. Do it today. All right, third and final segment here on Locked On Jaguars, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, the number one sports podcast network. I'm say it loud and proud. There you go. Don't try to dig those metrics up. Since so many people want to be nitpicky about every little thing you say, dig that up and find out why we're the number one sports podcast network. And then get back to me. Whatever metric you want, it does not matter. It's the truth. There's a lot of good, hardworking people on our network, and I appreciate all of them. I'm just a small part of this team. Make sure you check me out too on Locked On NFL. Yeah, we got 2 shows on Locked On NFL. Well, actually more than that, but the one I'm talking about is the daily Locked On NFL show with Tyler Rowland early in the morning. Wakes you up like a double shot of espresso, and then I'll come in a barbershop, and we use the help of local experts that have their finger on the pulse of the team. We use clips and recurring guests each and every day, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. It's a different dude, but it's the same dude each day of the week. And it gives you a little bit of an idea of what's going on around the National Football League. So do our crossover shows. The crossover show, I did it this week with Alex Clancy. And Alex Clancy was just very obvious, forthright and forthcoming that Kyler Murray has kind of been a little bit of a disappointment. I don't even know if Kyler Murray is going to be on the team next year in Arizona. But see, this is the kind of stuff that you get when you pay attention to local experts and not the big national guys that really don't talk and understand about what the team is about. You even beef with local people too, by the way, because people have a different way of looking at things. And some people, if you say anything about Trevor Lawrence, whether it's factual or close to it, or it's just your gut feeling, they get all upset and hot and bothered by it. But Trevor Lawrence is who he is and what he is. He happens to be, I believe, a little bit better when things get kind of rough. But it doesn't mean that's where you want to dwell, right? Trevor Lawrence, it's okay to say that he needs a powerful running game to help him, especially sometimes Trevor gets off to these slow starts. The running game is like throwing body punches, man. When you throw body punches, eventually those people bring those hands down, and then the headshots, which are pass plays, they work better. So that's why I want them to run the ball. It also falls right in line with what Liam Coen said that he wanted to do and be when he took this job, that he wants to break the huddle and he wants the other team to see them coming out of the huddle. And he wants them to play with energy. And those running backs feed off of that, right? A lot of talk about Bayshul Tuten when he came out is that he fumbled the ball a lot. He's fixed that stuff, right? And he's really, really quick to the hole. And it's a nice, it's a nice 1-2 punch to have with Travis Etienne, because normally when you have an explosive back like Etienne and then you come back, sometimes they come back with power, or sometimes you start out with a power guy like Derrick Henry and then you come back with a Justice Hill who has a little bit more speed. The Jaguars have two guys that are super, super explosive. In fact, they probably are more explosive in the run game with Bayshul in the game because they're different types of backs, but it has a very, very nice effect on the game when both of those guys get going. I got to give some credit, too, to the offensive line, man, because they had been maligned a little bit going into last week's game, and the Chargers had actually been a very good team defensively, and they punked them. They flat out punked them. What's the difference? What was the difference? Well, one of them was that they got Ezra Cleveland back, right? Arguably their best lineman along with Anton Harrison, in my opinion. And Robert Hainsey hasn't been anything to shake a stick at either. So those three guys, man, have played extremely well, especially when they've been healthy. But they're also the heartbeat of the team to the point where they play with this attitude and they play with this. What is that game that everybody used to play and the dude said finish them? Was that Mortal Kombat? They play with a finish them attitude. They finish plays. They play through the whistle. They get to the second level. I saw Hainsey making plays 30 yards down the field, man, and I just couldn't believe it. I mean, this is what we have been kind of asking for. Now, they're not going to dominate the teams like Seattle and maybe Philadelphia, and they got a good test coming up against Denver, but they should be able to move the guys from the Arizona Cardinals. Calais Campbell is one of them. Walter Nolan, young kid who just got into the action a couple of weeks ago. Josh Sweat. See, Josh Sweat is also on pace to get 15 sacks. We don't want to turn him loose on those edges, especially if Anton is not in the game. Or Walker Little definitely, and it should not be left one-on-one too often against Josh Sweat. So there's some talent. There's some talent there. So let's hit these body blows. Let's punch them in the stomach a little bit, slow those guys down, put a lot of pressure on them. Of course, Will Johnson, their fabulous rookie corner, isn't going to play. So there are going to be opportunities, too, for guys like Jacoby Myers and Parker Washington. The thing is though, to me, more than just about winning just this one game, running the football, it just builds up and taps more into the identity of this football team. Not only who they want to be, but when they look their absolute best, they have been able to run the ball. I think it kind of slows the game. It speeds the game up because it makes the game go quicker, but it slows things down, things that could get in your way, like trying too hard to hit big plays, turnovers. I don't want that clock to stop. I want that clock to run. And I want it to run with the Jaguars being in possession of the football. Run it when you get to the red zone. Run it, run it, run it, run it, run it. Wear them out and make them a desperate, desperate football team. So we were talking about the playoff implications and ramifications, whatever word you want to use for that. Right now, the Broncos are the 1 seed. The Patriots are 2, both at 9-2. The Colts are sitting there at 8-2. The Jags still play them twice. The Jags are 6-4. So they're right back into that wheelhouse where if they beat the Colts twice, they can win the division. Pittsburgh goes to Chicago, and then Baltimore's coming. So the only reason I mentioned both of them because I think only one team in the North is going to get a playoff berth, and the other one, they play each other twice. They're going to go by the wayside. The Chiefs have a very, very tough game this week as well. They're behind. Those Houston Texans are pesky, man. And the Buffalo Bills are 7-4. They haven't had their bye week yet, but they ain't got no defense. They played well last night, and then the offense stunk. They have bad skilled players at the wide receiver position, and they're just not very good. The Chargers are still in front of the Jaguars, but the Chargers and the Chiefs, the Jags actually own tiebreakers. So if they end up with the same record, those little pesky Texans, man, are 6-5, and that's why that game keeps getting. It's like an ingrown fingernail or a toe. I can't get rid that pain. It doesn't seem like it's that big of a deal, but it's kind of coming back to be a big deal. And I hope we don't look back and say that the Texans' whole season was saved or spearheaded or started or kickstarted by the game they played against the Jacksonville Jaguars in that fourth quarter. But we can not allow that game to be something that affects us the rest of the season. And I hope the Jaguars do the same thing. The one way you can do it is win the games you're supposed to. They win this week. They play the Titans next week. And the Jaguars could jump the boogie and be sitting there at 8-4. And then they would only really need to win 2 games to get into the playoffs, in my opinion. And if they win 3, they might be able to win the division, especially if they beat the Colts twice. The Colts have a very, 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 very tough schedule down the stretch. It ain't tough for me, man, to tell y'all that we appreciate you and we don't take you for granted here on Locked On Jaguars. Thank you for joining me today for 27.5 minutes or almost 28 minutes. We appreciate it. We don't take y'all for granted. All right, just win the game and come on. We'll see you at a post-game show on Sunday here on Locked On Jaguars.